Hello, Convention of States supporters. My name is Andrew Woodruff. I will be your host for this episode of COS Live, and I'm joined by Rita Dunaway, as always, my partner in crime. Rita, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. We've had an exciting week and lots to report on today.
Yes, we have had an exciting week. There is a lot to report on. If you missed it last Wednesday, unfortunately, the legislators of Montana rejected their constituents in a narrow denial of the COS resolution. We're going to have more on that and why we are still positive, plus exclusive interview with COS Regional Director Dave Schneider. He's going to have a great perspective. He's going to give us all the things we need to know about his region and the states that he oversees. But before we get to that, we have, of course, our Article 5 trivia giveaway with COS Vice President Mike Ruthenberg. Mike, take it away.
Well, hello, Andrew and Rita. It is great to see you. It's great to be here. And I know you're going to have an amazing show with Dave Schneider. He is one of the more brilliant people in our organization. He's been here as a state director of Kansas way back when. You guys are going to talk to him and find out all the history. But I would tune in because he is a wise man, and you guys are going to have a lot of fun on that. But for now, let me talk a little bit about trivia and convention states. One of the great things about tuning in here is that you guys learn so much. And don't forget to share this with other people, because it not only helps us to get the word out about convention states. People realize, wow, I haven't even signed the petition yet. I should sign the petition by going to conventionofstates.com. And if you look long enough, it'll pop up right in front of you. Otherwise, you can see it right on the front page. And then you can volunteer. You can become a district captain, like so many people are doing right now. We've never seen this month the past month of January was the biggest month in growth we've had in our history. And February is on track to pass January. There are a lot of people that are very upset with what's going on in the nation that want to do something. I don't know about you, but I haven't seen too many other things you can actually do, short of taking off your shoe and throwing it at the television in order to express your displeasure with what's going on in the swamp. So let's learn a little bit about COS today. And we have a great trivia question. We have some prizes, of course, in order to prime the pump. One of the prizes is a COS keychain. I think it's a pretty cool keychain. So there's our Convention of States keychain. And to go along with the keychain, we have a cell phone wallet. You peel it off the back, you stick it right on the back of your cell phone. You can keep your driver's license or whatever else you want in there. And of course, a pocket guide, just a single one this time, but you never know, that one pocket guide could be the tipping point between you and somebody that could turn out to be an activist just as great as you. Just by passing the pocket guide along, it's a great way to be able to make it happen. And don't forget, you can download the pocket guide from conventionofstates.com as well. So now it's time for our question of the day. Let's see how in tune you are with what's been going on in Convention of States, because this is a bit of a historical question. And it's also a wonderful time of year. I had Sunday. I love it when Valentine's Day is on a weekend, because I got to spend that day with my honey. We went for a beautiful hike with our dog. Of course, we're in Southern California. The weather was good. It was a little windy, but not like many of you are experiencing in the Midwest. And I hope you're snuggled up safe and warm wherever you are, because, boy, in the middle of our nation, it's just getting pounded all the way down to Texas. So, of course, it was Valentine's Day. I'm sure you came up with something. Well, a couple of years ago on Valentine's Day, we celebrated a victory. And we had a particular state in the nation that said, I do, to the Convention of States. And they passed a resolution on Valentine's Day back in 2019. You get to name the state and you get to claim the prizes if you have it. I'll see you at the end of the show to spill the beans on which state it was. So enjoy the show and stay tuned till the end.
Thanks, Mike. Well, the Convention of States resolution, as I said earlier, unfortunately, it failed this past Wednesday. And it was just such a narrow defeat. So disheartening to see a 26-24 defeat. But it happened mostly because the representatives within the urban areas of Montana were able to outvote the representatives within the more rural areas, which is just so unfortunate. And even though this might be a defeat, and even though this is a setback for Montanans, the people of Montana, they're not discouraged. Mostly because people in Montana, they brave the harshest weather known to man. They can go through any storm. They weather the most frigid of temperatures. But that's not the reason why they are encouraged. They are encouraged right now because despite this defeat, they were able to convince an overwhelming majority of the state of Montana to support the COS resolution, which would bring in and hold accountable the federal government from their overreach. One of our state director of Montana put together an amazing map that will show just what I'm talking about with the region, the urban areas, and with the areas. So Rita, why don't you let our viewers know exactly what they're looking at with this map?
Sure. Well, those red rural areas are represented by legislators who voted for the Convention of States, and the blue urban areas are those that voted against our Convention of States resolution. So as you can see, most of the state supports our efforts, but yet we were blocked by legislators representing those little pockets, those urban areas of Montana. And this is a familiar kind of story to many of us. I know it is to me. I'm in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and I see maps that look kind of like that. Every time we have an election, it's pretty frustrating. But after we were tabled in committee, the Convention of States resolution secured the 26 votes necessary in the Senate as a whole to be heard by the full Senate. It's kind of an extraordinary thing that our Montana sponsor did in order to pull the resolution out from the committee, even though the committee voted it down, and directly onto the floor. But we had the necessary support to do that. And then what happened really was heartbreaking, because at the last minute, one senator switched his vote and the resolution failed on the floor. But Andrew, we have faced adversity before, and our team in Montana is not discouraged, and neither are our volunteer teams in the other states working to pass our resolution. Because while we may have lost that one floor vote in the Montana Senate, again by one vote, we have won that state of Montana, as that map shows. It's only a matter of time before Montana citizens assert their will and compel their representatives to call for the first ever Article 5 Convention of States. We are working in states across the country, all 50 of them. And if you're watching today, you can join the fight, and we need you to join the fight. As always, your action is critical in making Convention of States happen. So don't assume that someone else out there is going to do the work for you. It's up to each one of us to be active where we are, to be self-governing citizens and take ownership of this process. So go to conventionofstates.com, sign, and then share the petition, and ask your legislators, your state legislators, to support the Convention of States resolution. Join a volunteer team today.
For more on the situation in Montana and news from across the Midwest, we have an on-the-ground reporter, because Dave Schneider is joining us, and he is a regional director with Convention of States Action. Dave, how are you doing today? And thank you for joining us on this program.
Doing well, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
Always. It's great to get your perspective. And we have so much ground to cover today, so I want to jump right into my very first question. Let's start with Montana, because that was the big story last week. It was the hot topic. Montana, we were expecting a vote early or later in the week, but we got a vote early in the week. And unfortunately, the COS resolution failed in Montana by the slimmest of margins, 26-24. Would you be able to tell us exactly what went down in Montana last week?
Sure. Actually, it started out the week extremely positive in the fact that Senator McGilvray was able to make a motion on the Senate floor to to tell the committee to report out our resolution. It's kind of a around the committee process just a little bit, and the fact that we had a lot of support in Montana, and he was able to make the case convincingly to the entire Senate that Convention of States deserved this day on the Senate floor. So with that, they actually held a vote on Monday of last week to pull forcefully the resolution out of committee to be able to be debated on the floor of the Senate. So that was a successful move on Senator McGilvory's part, and certainly he poured his heart and soul. You probably saw him in committee giving testimony, but this man was working behind the scenes very, very hard for Convention of States as well. And he was able to use those connections that he has in the Senate to do this maneuver to pull it out of that committee. It's not something that happens very often, so he was able to use that political capital to make that happen, to get us to the floor. With that, obviously, became very important floor vote that had to happen the very next day. So unfortunately, we were basically 1-2 votes short. Obviously, it came down to 26-24. If you flip one vote, then you're a tie. Then we have to go into those tie procedures. You have to have a majority. So yes, 2 votes short. So it was just a good debate, in the fact that our supporters were able to see what the opposition was like in Montana. And unfortunately, you saw some of the misinformation from the John Birch Society that was put into place somewhat with Senator Manzella. You saw some of her remarks, and it was just unfortunate to the fact that we did lose that vote. But when we break down the numbers, we just had very few Republicans that voted against us. And now all the Democrats voted against us. And I believe there were 17 Democrats. And when you add another 7 Republicans that joined their ranks, we did lose. Unfortunate. We did take the majority of the state. If you look at the map, we took the vast majority of the state of Montana. But unfortunately, those urban areas and those very fairly more populated areas, the smaller part of the state was able to prevail in our vote overall. So that's what happened in Montana. The team is certainly not done. They're working really hard they've now identified some of these senators that voted against us, and really working hard to put things in place. Unfortunately, in the state of Montana, they only meet every 2 years. So this was, again, is disheartening to us that we didn't get through the legislature. But you got to remember, this team has been waiting 5-6 years to have a committee. They've never been able to present their case in front of a committee. It's always been killed or whatever in the past behind the scenes. So the team were just pouring out their souls in this committee. And I think, again, that you saw that, those of you that watched the committee process. And we're so close in Montana that we're going to come back with a vengeance in 2 years.
And I just want to follow up real quick, because you touched on it a little bit about what's next in Montana, and you touched a little bit on how the grassroots supporters are feeling there. Would you be able to expand a little bit on that and just tell the viewers exactly what's next for Montana and how the grassroots volunteers are doing there? You bet. Well,
Obviously, this has opened up the eyes of some folks in Montana, and the fact that they thought they had more support. Not talking about our leadership in the grassroots, but just general John Q. public that might be out there, and just figured Montana would get on board with something that is should be so easy to do in a state like Montana. And they're very disappointed. So what's happening right now is we're having an influx of a lot of grassroots support. Unfortunately, they didn't get on board before the vote, but now their eyes have been opened up to the process, and really concerning them that Montana didn't take the initiative to join the other states in the area, like a North Dakota or even a Missouri or a Utah, in this initiative to join the Convention of States. So there's a big influx of new recruits, and the team is doing an amazing job taking those folks and getting them plugged in. And there's a lot of good things going to happen in Montana over the next 2 years in anticipation of the next time we have the legislature look at our initiative.
Mhm.
Well, I believe it. And Dave, having been with Convention of States since the beginning, I can certainly testify to the fact that this was by far the best progress we've ever made in Montana. So even though we didn't make it across the finish line this year, it was a huge gain for us in the state. So I know people, some of them will be tempted to see it as a loss, but we have made huge gains in Montana, and hats off to you and the Montana team for your work there. But let's move on now to another one of your states, the state of Nebraska. And some of our viewers may know that Nebraska is unique because it is the only unicameral legislature in the country. So it only has a Senate, doesn't have a House. And we recently had a committee hearing there in Nebraska, and you were there on the ground for that, but we had to cut away from our live coverage of that committee hearing in order to switch over and broadcast the Montana Senate debate. So tell us, how did it go in Nebraska? We didn't get to see it all, so fill us in on what happened.
Well, LR14 was in front of the committee last week. And as you said, I was sitting in the committee and testified there in Lincoln, as well as we've packed the room as best we could with the COVID restrictions that are in place in the Capitol building. We had a line of folks about 30 deep that wasn't able to get into the room. And so it was an amazing sight. But unfortunately, a lot of those folks didn't even get to watch it because they had to travel home from Lincoln. They were essentially just turned away by the state. So it was frustrating for those folks. But inside the committee room, it was just amazing to watch because of the proponents. We had a room full of proponents, and the opponents to our resolution were 3 individuals. One of them, I would say, was from the conservative side of the aisle. And the other 2 were literally leftist organizations that came in to testify against us. We had Common Cause that were there, and a group in Nebraska that's very similar to that initiative is Open Skies. So it's another leftist-leaning organization. They both testified in opposition against us. But other than that, Eagle Forum was there. One individual from Eagle Forum. She comes every single session and has been opposing Convention of States ever since I've been involved. So 3 individuals against, roomfuls of supporters that were gave wonderful testimony and talking about the process and why Nebraska needs to get on board right away. So it's just an amazing time. They did not vote, and they typically don't vote the same day they have the committee hearings. It's been a frustrating process in the state of Nebraska, and we can talk more about that if you'd like. But in that particular committee, it's made of 8 individuals. 4 of them tend to be supporters, and 4 of them tend to be opponents. So it's been kind of at loggerheads in the state of Nebraska over the last couple of years. But there is hope. There's a lot of support in the Nebraska unicameral. And remember, it is a unicameral. There's only one chamber in the state of Nebraska. We have more than the majority of the senators that are in support of Convention of States, and that's important because they have what's called a filibuster as well. So it takes 33 of the 49 senators to agree to take any bill past the conversation stage of running the resolution to be able to go to the voting of that particular bill. We're pretty close to meeting that threshold, and if we can get to that threshold, we can force it out of committee and make it happen on the Nebraska floor. So we're just trying to wrangle in the last couple senators to make sure that Nebraska gets a chance to at least debate this on the floor of the unicameral very soon.
And it is just really inspiring to hear how many supporters showed up to voice their support for the Convention of States resolution. And it's inspiring to hear that happen in Montana as well. And then I want to switch over to another one of your states, Kansas, because we had Representative Michael Murphy come onto the program last week, and he talked about what COS is doing in Kansas. And he used to be a volunteer with the Kansas COS Kansas team until he was elected to be a Kansas representative. Do you happen to know Representative Murphy? And would you be able to give us an update in Kansas and our progress with the COS resolution?
Actually, I know Mike extremely well. When I was the state director of the state of Kansas, when I first was a volunteer 7 years ago, almost 8, oh my goodness, almost 8 years this summer. Mike was one of my first district captains in an area of the state that was pretty hard for us to get any traction in, and was able to meet with him very early on in that process and gave him a lot of materials. And as a thoughtful individual as he is, he was able to kind of read through it and convince himself that convention of states is the solution that the founders gave us to solve some of the issues that we're finding at the federal level. And Mike has been a good friend of mine over those years and has helped me. As not the first time he's looked at public service. We've talked many times over those 8 years about him running in various different capacities, and it was great to see him step up to the legislature and run for the legislature this last go around. So it's great to have a good champion like that in Topeka, and certainly a friend of mine whenever I get to the Capitol. Him and I text very regularly, so it's great to have Mike there. So to answer your question, yeah, I know Mike extremely well. He's great champion for the cause. As far as our update in the state of Kansas, as far as convention of states is concerned, we're looking at introducing fairly soon. We're probably going to be starting on the Senate side. We have a really good champion in the fact that the Senate president is Senator Ty Masterson, really another good friend of mine as well. But he carried us on the floor a few years ago when we ran in the Kansas Senate, and now he's the Senate president, and he's excited in the fact that he's going to lead the charge for convention of states and the grassroots in the state of Kansas. So it's real great to have such a champion in a leadership position in the state of Kansas. We're hoping with his leadership we can move past the hurdles we've had here in the state of Kansas in the past and really blow through and get Kansas on board with convention states.
Well, let's talk about that just a little bit more, Dave, because we know that under Article 5, it's the state legislature that applies for a convention to propose amendments. The governor's signature is not required. Governors have no role in this. And in 15 states, as you know, we have already passed our resolution for a convention to propose amendments with just a simple majority vote in both chambers. But Kansas has an unusual obstacle to this, and I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it is an interesting situation that we do find ourselves in Kansas because we have absolutely wonderful support in the Kansas legislature with more than a majority of support. We've held votes in both the House and the Senate in the past, both garnering more than a majority in each time that we've done it. But the problem in the state of Kansas is the Kansas Constitution. It was basically rewritten in the year of 1974, and somehow there was a change made as far as the voting parameters around calling a convention of states. It's the only state in the union that has such provision hardwired into the Constitution. And the fact is, the Kansas Constitution says that when the state legislature considers calling for a convention or even ratifying an amendment to the Constitution, the United States Constitution, they must have a 2/3 majority vote in both chambers. Again, there's rules in certain chambers in the several states that kind of have the same kind of language in it, but this is the only state constitution that has such provision. Now, there is a lot of argument whether the fact that the Kansas Constitution can bind a legislature that passed the resolution or passed the change back in 1974 to a right that's held under the United States Constitution, current right that's held under the United States Constitution to call an Article 5 convention. So we're working on some of the legalities behind the scenes to see if, in fact, that prior legislature can bind the current legislature to such provisions. But that's to be determined, and we're working through some of that right now.
Mm-hmm. Another state in your region is South Dakota. And recently, in a hearing, we experienced, unfortunately, a narrow defeat in South Dakota. So does that mean South Dakota is dead for the rest of the year, or is there hope in the future for reviving the COS resolution in South Dakota this year?
There's a lot of hope. And one thing about me is I don't like to lose. And the state of South Dakota is a really good indicator of my I'm just ready to fight. And South Dakota was ready to fight as well as far as getting on board with convention of states. Yes, we did have a narrow defeat in South Dakota House of Representatives Committee. We lost by 1 vote. We had one individual that voted no, that if he would have switched to yes, we would have passed and moved to the House floor. Of course, we would have been still in a tough slog, it was a tough fight on the South Dakota House floor at that point. But in reality, things happen for a reason. And in this case, we showed up in Pierre. We had over 100 patriots that showed up in the city of Pierre. Now, I know most of you do not know what it's like in Pierre, South Dakota, but the entire capital only has about 14,000 individuals. And it's one of the smallest capital cities in the United States. In the entire state of South Dakota, there's about 850,000 individuals. And the population centers are about 3 hours away from Pierre. It's very remote in Pierre. So we had 100 folks that came to Pierre for a 7:45 a.m. Central Time. Now, you got to remember, half the state's on Mountain Time, so it's 6:30 their time. They showed up for a committee hearing on a Monday morning. 100 folks from all around the state. So what happened is they came to Pierre on Sunday, stayed the night, and were ready to be at the Capitol early that next morning. And with such a big showing in Pierre, that the outpouring of support that we had made a statement. And the first thing that the Senate did was recognize that there was a huge groundswell for this initiative. And so what immediately happened is we filed a identical resolution on the Senate side. We're ahead of the deadline, so we were able to file a counterpart resolution in the Senate. It's SGR 502 was filed in Senate. We're looking to be in committee again on the Senate side next week, and we're looking next Wednesday. Hopefully, we'll be in committee and get out of committee, get to the Senate floor, and then ram right through that roadblock that we had on the House side in a very short amount of time. So South Dakota is very live, and we're looking to be back in Pierre next week to make a big move to get South Dakota on board.
Awesome. Well, Dave, I just have to point out that in these states that we're talking about, Montana, Nebraska, South Dakota, the temperatures aren't particularly balmy this time of year. So I hope that our viewers are as inspired as I am by the dedication of the grassroots, these people who are so concerned about the future of our country that they take time off work if they need to. They brave the frigid temperatures and bad weather. They spend their money because they're so committed to saving the future of our nation. And I think that's just amazing. Now, Dave, we are a nonpartisan organization, but I've noted that there does seem to be really an increased sense of urgency right now. The new administration just seems bent upon expanding the size and the scope of the federal government. And a lot of us are really concerned about that. Do you see that sense of urgency, and are you concerned about the trajectory that America is on right now?
I'm deeply concerned, and I can see it in our grassroots as well. They're very concerned at this minute. We have a huge influx of folks that get the sense of urgency. I wish they would have come 2-3 years ago to really have that same sense of urgency. It's really an illustration of the dysfunction that we have in place in Washington, D.C. It really shouldn't matter who our president is so much. And it really just, again, highlights that dysfunction. And these people are really understanding that convention of states is the solution to get us back on the right track in America. Unfortunately, in some of these legislatures, they're a little slower to act. And that's why these patriots are desperately needed to show up and to speak their minds and to make sure that their legislatures understand the sense of urgency that they have in fixing the and understanding their role under the United States Constitution to act under Article 5 to call a convention of states.
Mm-hmm. And to just kind of track along with the sense of urgency, as you know, our resolution covers 3 topics: fiscal restraints, term limits for elected officials, and limitations on federal overreach. So in light of what's going on in Washington, D.C., Do you have a favorite amendment idea within those three categories that you could share with our viewers?
I certainly have a few that are my favorites. I think what's referred to as a countermand amendment is probably one of my favorites, and the fact that the states, if enough of them agree, probably a super majority of states agree, they can overrule any legislative action from Congress or from executive order from the president, something along those lines. It would have to be carefully crafted type amendment, but most people call it the countermand amendment. There's several other amendments I think are very much needed. And along the fiscal restraints, as a former banker, I think that the federal government needs to have general accounting principles imposed upon it. Right now, with the accounting that we have in the federal government of unicorns and rainbows, nobody really knows what the debt is, how bad it really is, but I know it's bad and it's going to come crashing down at some point, and we just don't want to be the ones without a chair. So.
Sure. Well, Dave, before we let you go, is there anything else you want to share from your region? And can you tell our viewers what they should do if they want to help and get involved?
Well, I think if you're not already a petition signer, be a petition signer. So go to conventionofstates.com, make sure you've signed the petition, as well as sign up to volunteer. We need more volunteers in the grassroots in every state in the union, and we are active in all 50 states. So if you haven't heard me talk about your state, that doesn't matter. Get out there, volunteer. We need you on our teams. Go to Convention of States and be active.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dave, for joining us on this episode of COS Live. You're always welcome here. Love hearing the updates in the states that you are overseeing, and we can't wait to have you back to talk more about your region and states that are getting ready to pass the COS resolution.
Thanks, guys.
But right now, we have to transition to Mike, who has the answer for our Article 5 trivia giveaway.
Okay, I'm back, and I'm glad to see all of you guys are still here, and hopefully you got quite a bit out of that wonderful interview that we had with Dave Schneider. And you're probably wondering, if you didn't either look it up or just happen to know it and type that answer into the comments, who was the state that celebrated the passing 2 years ago of the COS resolution in 2019. That's when it was. Well, the answer is Arkansas. Arkansas became our 13th state to pass the resolution. It was Valentine's Day 2019. And now you have the answer to our trivia question. Our prize again, the COS keychain. We have the wallet, pretty cool COS cell phone wallet, and some stickers that you'll be able to stick wherever you like. I particularly like these ones because they say, I voted, it didn't work. I have one of these on my laptop because we all did vote and it didn't necessarily work the way we wanted it to be. So you'll be hip with the newest COS stickers along the way. So thanks so much for joining. And by the way, of course, if you didn't win, go to shop conventionofstates.com and shop in our store and get the stuff that you didn't win. That's all I've got for today. Back to you, Andrew and Rita. We'll see you next week.
Thank you so much, Mike. If you are out there today and you are frustrated with corrupt politics, if you're sick and tired of having your rights steamrolled, of not having a voice, know this: there is a plan. The American founders were brilliant. They knew that this might happen one day, and they gave us a solution for such a time as this. That's why Convention of States is working to use Article 5 of the Constitution to put the people back in charge. COS equips American patriots to reclaim their self-governance. The movement is well underway with 15 states on board already. 34 is that magic number we need. And when we get to convention, we're going to send the career politicians packing, force DC to use our money wisely, and place meaningful limits on federal overreach. So go to conventionofstates.com, sign and share the petition, and join your local Convention of States team. Help us to make history and change DC forever.
And after you've gone and signed the petition, and after you've shared the petition, don't forget to also follow us on social media. Rumble, MeWe, Gab, YouTube, Facebook, Parler, Instagram. All of these social media outlets you can find Convention of States, and we want you to go follow us, to like and to share all of the Convention of States info that we have there. Also, make sure to check out the battle cry with COS co-founder and president Mark Meckler. It's at 8 p.m. Eastern time right here on Facebook. And we will see you next week for another episode of COS Live. Same time, same place, 6 p.m. Eastern time. But until then, we have more work to do because we have a country to save. And remember, if you're looking for the person who is going to bring an Article 5 Convention of States, look in the mirror because it's going to be you. Well, that's all we have time for today. Bye.